Well, I really appreciate everybody showing up today. We have a few hundred people, more than 400 people on the live meeting today or on the webcast. And it's certainly a big honor for us at K2 to have this level of interest in what we're doing for SharePoint 2013. We're very excited about it. We're really excited to be at a point where we can share it with everyone, and we're looking forward to today. I have with me Eric Schaffer, one of our product managers. I'm Adriaan Van Wyk, one of the founders and CEO of the company, and we want to talk to you about what we've done building a new solution from the ground up for SharePoint 2013 and K2. I don't want to spend a lot of time in PowerPoint this morning, but I do want to set the scene to make sure that you'll understand everything that we're going to show to you and that we contextualize it properly. Because there's quite a lot of depth here, and then I want to get to Eric's part of the session this morning, which is really a demo and actually show you the software and show you what we've done, and we'll come back for a quick summary and some questions in the end if there are questions. So I'm going to jump right in. When we look at the SharePoint landscape from a K2 point of view, we really see it sort of broken down into two very high levels. The first one being that there are items within SharePoint that you can build solutions on, and you can build those solutions within the context of those items. So think about a task item or a custom item that's locked within a custom list, or a document that's sitting within the library. And you want to build a solution that really deals with that specific item within SharePoint. And then we have the world that exists outside of SharePoint as far as those originating items are concerned, but it uses SharePoint as part of the solution. So you might start your process or your business application within your financial system or within your support system, and eventually you'll save some documents into SharePoint, and you'll check some list items into an item list, or you'll look up some items in the item list and use that within your solution. If we look at the solution that we built, we really decided to focus across those two high-level areas, but break it down underneath it to make it really easy and really simple for people to get going. One of the simplest scenarios that we've seen is where people just want to go into a document library and they just want to take that item and be able to build a workflow around it. And they want to do it really fast. It must be very easy for them. You don't have to go on training to be able to accomplish this. The software should guide you. It should really make it easy for you to take this item and build a workflow solution, a simple workflow solution, either around a list item or a document library. And we're going to spend some time this morning to talk to you about what we've done in K2 to make this really, really easy, and what we've done to make it also very powerful. We do know, however, that almost every single one of those solutions eventually evolve. Let's say, for example, that initial workflow starts with a sales proposal, and somebody saves a sales proposal document into a document library, and then they want to be able to route that to their regional manager for approval. You want to be able to extend that solution so that when the document gets to the regional manager, he's got context around what's happening within this proposal. Who is the customer? What is the current status of the customer? Have we dealt with him before? And allow him to make an informed decision. And that's when we start adding additional information, additional data, more exciting business forms to the solution that should be easily accessible and easy to use. And we're going to spend some time on that as well and explain to you how easy it is without writing any code to evolve that simple workflow solution into a true business application that's built on top of a specific item within SharePoint. Lastly, we mentioned that sometimes these business processes start, live, and exist outside of SharePoint. However, there's a lot of structured and unstructured information within SharePoint that we want to use when we build and when we run these business applications. We want to use it to make informed decisions. We might want to use it to create some new information, or use information and share it with other people, or to use it as a collaboration platform. And K2 easily extends outside of that world and allow you to build these business applications, but still integrated very closely within SharePoint. So if we jump into that first scenario and we really look at what we're going to do there, what we're going to do this morning is we're going to take a sales proposal and we're going to put it in a document library where all of our sales quotes get saved, and we're going to build a new workflow to allow us to route that to one of our managers for approval. When we send that document for approval, we want to be able to go back into SharePoint and very easily go and look up which territories does this manager manage, which territory does this quote or the sales proposal originate from, and then make sure that we send it to the right manager for approval. And once that is done, we want to use some of the visual wizards within the workflow environment and make it easy to save that document into an approved library, or if it's rejected, to deal with the fact that it's rejected. Now, in order to do that, as I mentioned initially, we want to make sure that it's really easy for the most non-technical and non-development people within the organization to be able to accomplish this task of building this solution. So what you're going to see Eric do is once K2 is installed within SharePoint, and we'll talk about installation a little bit later on, but we really wanted to make it easy for you to install K2 within SharePoint. It's a zero configuration installation out of the App Store. Once it's installed, you'll have the K2 application icon in your document library, in your ribbon. And what Eric is going to do is going to click on that K2 application, which will then take him to the screen that will allow him to decide what his application should be able to do. We kept this very easy, very focused. We wanted to make sure that we describe what it is that you have to do. We don't create unnecessary items for you. In this case, in the first scenario, we're really just going to build a workflow. Although it can grow into being a very powerful workflow, we're going to make it very easy and keep it very simple initially. We're just going to choose to build a workflow. We're going to use the out-of-box SharePoint forms. We're going to use the out-of-box capabilities to collaborate around that document. But we will build a workflow that knows how to deal with routing this document. And once we've clicked OK, we will open up the graphical workflow designer, still within SharePoint, and allow you to build your workflow and automate your workflow. We've done a lot of work. We've built a whole bunch of new wizards and templates for this environment. We wanted to make sure that all of your existing line of business information and data is available within this environment when you start enhancing your solution. But it also works incredibly well by focusing the end user on the business problem at hand. You won't see our workflow designers asking you to build complex loops or while or if statements. It's not necessary to go and split items out of arrays just to get a list of result sets back that you can add up into a single value to make a decision. All of this is there, and it was designed and was built to allow people to focus on the business problem at hand. And we know that it's a unique experience. We know that it's a powerful experience. We've seen many people succeed with this before. We've done a lot of additional work. Once that is done, Eric is going to run you through that scenario, and we're going to take that same quote, and we want to be able to evolve it. I mentioned earlier on, we know that within our own organization, when sales quotes gets routed for approval, when it gets to regional managers or to our chief financial officer, they need additional information to make a decision based on the sales proposal. Who is the customer? Is this an existing customer? Is there any public information available about this customer? How many other quotes have we sent to them? And the question becomes, well, how easy is it to take that information and present it to the manager or to our CFO when they get the document to approve it? And you'll see how Eric is going to use K2 Smart Forms and how he's going to extend our sales proposal document approval process without writing any code into something that looks much more like a powerful business application. It's still focused around the document that's in our document library, so it's still focused around the item within SharePoint. But because we have this item, we can contextualize it, and we can go and get additional information, and we can put it on a business form that the CFO can access from his iPad, or our regional manager can access from his Surface tablet when he's on the road seeing customers. That form will pull information from other systems. For the sake of this demo this morning, we decided to go outside of just the Microsoft world. We're actually going to talk live to Salesforce.com. We're going to go and get information about our customer from Salesforce.com. You're going to see that information on the same business form as the actual information about the sales quote in the document. And again, we're going to do all of this without the need to write code. And we will also go back into SharePoint and we'll go and retrieve a list of all previous quotes for this customer. That's the form that we'll present to our user and our manager. And then, of course, once he's actioned it, we'll continue with the workflow. And depending on our workflow logic, we will then we'll route this form, or we'll take this approved quote and we'll save it into another document library. We've done a lot of work here to bring the K2 Smart Forms design environment seamlessly into SharePoint. Our footprint on the SharePoint box is very small, which makes maintenance, configuration, installation very, very simple. But the entire platform that's available within K2 surfaces seamlessly within the SharePoint environment, and the users never have to leave the SharePoint environment in their browser. You'll see how we bring this powerful drag and drop environment to you, where you can build business forms, you can configure the logic, you can reuse existing forms and views that other people have built before, and you can use that to essentially mash up your own complex business solution to solve these problems within your organization. All of the items that exist within the context of your solution is nicely grouped together within the context of that document library. So when you go into the document library, you go to the K2 application, you don't have to go and look around or guess where all the artifacts are that makes up your solution. They're all there. We group them together for you. You can edit them there. You can enhance them. You can manage them through your life cycle. You can add additional items. You can build out your solution. But we continue to make it very easy for you to see what it is that ultimately makes up your solution and to manage those different components through the life cycle and through the version. Lastly, one of the scenarios that we're going to cover this morning, as I mentioned before, is where business processes or business process applications exist or originate outside of the scope of SharePoint. A lot of our customers have environments where accounts payable or order processing or support systems or help desks originates information or creates tickets or creates actions that needs to be actioned upon that they use K2 for. A lot of those are more complex and larger business process automation based solutions, and they use technologies such as BPMN to model those tools in, and they want to be able to bring that into their solutions. And K2 deals with that incredibly well and has a powerful platform for allowing you to build those applications, but then again seamlessly bring them into the world of SharePoint. And we didn't ignore that when we built this new solution. We wanted to make sure that we provide you with a holistic solution that scales across the entire platform. Again, keeping it really simple, making it very powerful, yet without the need to go down into code levels or write code or write JavaScript or jQuery in order to build complex and powerful business forms that your users can use to make decisions based on far richer information that they would have available normally. What Eric is going to do there is going to show you how we build a form. We're actually going to take that business application and we're going to originate that within Salesforce this morning live. We're going to go to salesforce.com. You're going to see how really well K2 integrates. We're going to take a form that we built inside of SharePoint, and we're going to surface that form seamlessly within another web application, which is not very easy to do if you build it natively with SharePoint. There will be seamless data exchange between those two applications because of the fantastic infrastructure that Microsoft provides for us in SharePoint 2013 and Office 365. And then you'll see how we originate the quote-to-cash process from there, and then how we build the solution, automate the solution with it. What you're seeing there on the screen is the K2 Smart Form. That Smart Form is actually built within SharePoint, within our SharePoint solution. It accesses information that's stored within SharePoint, but we have the ability to run that seamlessly within other applications within our environment. And because this process originates or starts outside of SharePoint, we're going to use this to start our process with. As I mentioned before, these applications or these broader or more complex business process automation also sometimes requires a different level of tooling. Our environment around SharePoint, our solution stack around SharePoint still allows you to use the traditional K2 tools. Our thick line design environment, where we can take BPMN-based diagrams and models that was modeled in third-party tools and seamlessly bring them into this environment and allow you to build these rich applications using mature tooling within K2 Studio if it's needed and if it's required. Of course, if we look back, we believe that the solution that we've built in K2 for SharePoint and the enhancements we've made, all the exciting IP that we've added, really positions K2 as in a very unique position of being the only application, the only platform that allows you to build business process applications that can start with simple workflows, which you can build within minutes, and scale throughout your organization as needs evolve all the way through to the biggest and most complex applications that you need to build. And that's very exciting. That leads us to a position where we measure success within our customers, not when they take their first process live or when they take their second process live. We like it when they build 15 applications or 30. Some of our customers have deployed as many as 300 or 400 of these business process applications within a very short period of time, and deploy them throughout the organization using a combination of these tools. And that for us is success. That for us is customer success, and that's for us what we call success on the K2 platform. And we believe that the SharePoint 2013 solution actually creates a richer platform for you to accomplish that within your own organizations. So I'm going to stop there. We have 40 minutes left in the session. I really want to hand over to Eric, who's going to run us through a couple of these demo scenarios. He's going to show you the software. We really want to share with you what we've done. It's a live demo. And after that, we'll come back, we'll summarize this, and we'll see if there's time for some questions. Eric, over to you.
Thanks, Adriaan. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Alrighty, so just to kind of recap on the first scenario, what we're going to look at is that very simple first scenario where we have a sales quote document library. We're going to want to route that for approval to a regional sales manager based on a lookup to an existing SharePoint list, and then build the workflow so that when the document is approved or the quote is approved, it moves to the finance site into an approved quotes library, and if it's declined, then we'll go ahead and delete the document. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. So here I've got my SharePoint 2013 environment. I've got a quotes library with a couple of quote documents in here and a couple pieces of metadata around who the account is, the amount for the quote, the expiration date, the product, which is a lookup, as well as the region, which is also a lookup. If we just quickly pop over to region, we can see that based on a couple of regions, we have a couple of managers. Fairly straightforward little list there. So let's go ahead and say we want to add the K2 application to this. So we'll just go to the ribbon bar and click the K2 application icon. And as Adriaan showed, that's going to take us to an initial screen that will allow us to select what are the pieces of this application that we want to build. And for this particular scenario, we're just going to use the data and workflow elements. We'll look at the other elements a little bit later. And we're going to select to kick this thing off manually and then just click OK. So behind the scenes now, K2 is doing a bunch of stuff to get everything ready and then to drop us into the K2 process design canvas, where we'll be able to build out that workflow, route the document to the manager for approval, and go from there. So just take a moment here while it spins up the workflow designer. The initial screen that you see here is just a little bit of process level configuration, what we want to call this workflow and what we want the label to be, but we'll just go ahead and click finish. And then we'll jump over to our menu to go to the user task section and say that we want to do our review, which is a SharePoint task. So we're going to use the standard out-of-the-box SharePoint task forms for this task, and we'll just call this review. And we'll give the person that's making this decision 2 actions, very simple: approve and decline. We'll go ahead and click next. We have the ability to customize the business logic that happens once the person makes that decision. But in this case, we're going to keep it fairly straightforward and just click next. Now we can select which of the out-of-the-box SharePoint forms we want to show. Do we want to allow them to make edits to the metadata, or do we want to just show the display form? We can choose that. We'll leave edit as the default. Now we need to decide who are we going to route this task to. Now we could very easily route this thing to individual people, to groups, or to roles. You even have in the context of things like originator, the person who kicked off the process, as well as the manager of that person. But in this particular case, we want to be able to look it up based on the metadata in the SharePoint list. So we're just going to go and find our reference to our region list. And inside that, we can execute a method that will allow us to go ahead and pull back the fully qualified name of that manager. So we're just going to drag that on. It's going to pop up an interface that says, well, we need to specify which region. So we can just drill down into our context here and pull the region value for the document that the workflow has context around. And just click OK. And so then that will automatically route to the user, the manager, based on the region that was selected. We can also specify that we want to notify participants when they receive the work item by email. So when we click Next now, we'll be able to go ahead and customize this email message that we send to the user. So we'll go ahead and do the review quote as the subject. We can also, if we want to, add some attachments. So we can even do something like taking the actual quote document and attaching it to the email. We can just drag that document content onto the attachment screen, and then it gives us the ability to specify what we want the file name to be. And again, I can just go into my reference. I can use the existing file name, which will be fine. You also see that it put some context in here around saying, some context to the email, giving a link to the work list item, as well as some of the email actions. So the ability to just respond to the email with an approve or a decline is also been configured in this environment as well, and so those actions will show in the email. That's all we want to do for the email here. Let's go ahead and click Finish, and we'll see that those, based on those two actions, we get the two new drop zones for approve and decline. So we said that in the case of decline, we want to go to our document context and grab one of our document wizards that would actually just go ahead and delete the document. We drag that on. We're going to get a couple of questions. So it's asking us if we want to delete the document that we associated with the start of this workflow, and we'll say yes. It also gives us the option to say whether or not we want to use the recycle bin feature in SharePoint. We can either delete permanently or use the recycle bin. We'll use the recycle bin in this case. We don't need to provide any additional filters, and we'll go ahead and click Finish. So there we've configured the delete document. Now we can go ahead and say we want to drag on the move document wizard onto the approved drop zone. So in this particular case, what we're going to do is, again, we're going to get the selection of which document we want to move. We want to move our quote document. We don't need to specify any particular filters, and then we need to select what the destination we're going to send this to. So we get to select from our site collection. In this case, we just have one site collection, but if we had multiple, we'd be able to see those. I will select my portal.knowledge.com site collection. I get to see my sites and my libraries. I'm going to go ahead and select my finance site, and inside my finance site, I have an approved quotes document library. In addition to moving it to the approved quote document library, if we have a lot of quotes coming in, we want to organize them a little bit. So I actually want to be able to add it to a folder that's based on the account name. So based on the company name of the account that we're sending the quote to, I want to either create a folder if the folder doesn't exist, or have it insert this quote into a folder if it's already there. And so by just specifying the folder there as a dynamic value, it'll either create it or just use the existing folder. We'll go ahead and click Next. Again, no additional filters. We'll just go ahead and click Finish. So there we've got our very simple workflow. Obviously, we could do a lot more complex stuff here, but for the sake of time, let's just go ahead and deploy and run this workflow. So it did a build, everything's good, and now it's going to just take a couple moments to actually deploy this workflow to our server, and then we'll actually go and run through the end user experience of this workflow. Okay, so it's saving the rights, and we'll go ahead and click Finish. So now we can just go ahead with the designer and exit the designer. Once we exit the designer, you'll see a screen that Adriaan showed of basically the application for this particular library and all the particular pieces of kind of all of our artifacts for that library. So we have our objects and our workflow. This also gives us the ability to do things like generate the forms and reports and all that kind of other good stuff that we'll look at in a little bit later. So let's go ahead and go back to our quote library and run one of these documents through that workflow. So I'll just select the context of this first one here and just go straight down to the K2 workflows selection there. This will allow us to select which workflow we want to use. We just have one for this library right now. We'll click Next. And then we'll go ahead and just click Start to kick off that workflow. So that's gone ahead and kicked that off. Based on our region of North America, Bob is the person that will receive the task. So I'm going to jump into another remote desktop session here where I'm logged into SharePoint as Bob. I'm on the portal page, and I have my K2 work list here, which I can just go ahead and refresh. And once the task has been assigned, you'll see that the task shows up there. We can also go ahead and open up the view flow for that, which will show us, basically that we're sitting in that review step of this particular process. So let's go ahead and open up the form, In this particular case, we have the form with the context of the workflow, so our ability to make a decision, as well as our ability to open up the form that will show us the SharePoint information. So this is the SharePoint edit form, just made available through this task form. So we can go ahead and close that, and we can go ahead and select approve and submit that to move that on. We close that. You can actually go and see that the email came through while I was talking here. This will be the one that just came through this last minute. We can see that we have, it says Dear Bob Maggio. We have the document attached, and we have the ability to just reply to these emails as well with approve or decline. If we go back to our view flow, we should see that the document while we were talking there has been moved. So let's go ahead and close that and go back to the other screen here where we're still in as the administrator, and we'll just go ahead and refresh. We'll see that that document has moved on. If we go into our finance site, go into our approved quotes library, and go into, it was Express, we'll go into the Express folder, and we'll see that that new document has been added there and it's pending signature. So the quote was approved, it was moved on into the finance site, into the approved quote library. So that just kind of wraps up that first scenario. We took a document library with a lookup list, and we were able to build a workflow that routed to a manager based on the region. And once the item was approved, we were able to route it to a different site and move it into a folder. So let's go back to the slide for a second, and we'll tee up the next scenario. So the next scenario is about taking something like that simple kind of workflow scenario, and evolving it a little bit. Now we want to be able to provide a little bit more context to the manager when they're making a decision, because just being able to see that one quote in isolation is actually a very limited view for someone who is making management level decisions. They really need to be able to see more information about potentially who the account is, maybe some history of quotes. Maybe we want to see if we constantly send this customer quotes and nothing happens, or we've already sent a quote for a particular item and this is a duplicate that's coming in. We need to be able to provide an additional level of context. And so what we're going to do is be able to now take that approval view, switch it over to these smart forms, and then start pulling in some things from our line of business system, salesforce.com, to show the details about the account, and then from that finance site be able to show our list of approved quotes. It's not really possible to build this type of form in the standard SharePoint tooling, and as Adriaan mentioned, other form technologies require a lot of jQuery and JavaScript, which I'm not very good at, so let's go ahead and use K2 Smart Forms. So I'm going to go ahead and jump back into our lab, into our SharePoint site, our environment here. I'm going to go back to the portal site. I'm actually going to move into the draft quotes library. So I've teed a couple things up for us. If we go into, it's the same type of library, the same type of information, but if we go into the K2 application, already gone in and initialized this by selecting the forms and generating some of the initial K2 forms, and wired up just a couple of things like the workflow and so on, but left a couple things undone that we're going to go ahead and fix here. So you can see that in addition to the objects and the workflow, we have our list of forms and views. And so a view is just a small container of information that you can then assemble together onto a form. So I'm going to go ahead into the edit. So when the person is in, when we look at the SharePoint item and we go into the edit mode, when we select the account name, in SharePoint we had it set up where it's just basically a text field. But we want to, that can introduce typing errors and issues there. So what we want to do is we actually want to edit this form to be able to go ahead and change that text field into a lookup that actually looks up the name of the account from Salesforce. So here we can see the view with all the controls for the standard pieces of metadata that we have on this document library. But we're going to go ahead and take account, and we're just going to switch over and select to change that control to what we call a picker control. Once we do that over in the properties window, we can go ahead and make a selection as to what business system we want to connect this to. So I have a Salesforce account object here that I can go ahead and connect to, and I can just select a couple of options here about how I want it to be able to be searched. So I'm going to search by name. I'm also going to select what I want to display and what I want to save. So I'm going to use name in all those cases and go ahead and click OK. And with that, just very little effort, I've now connected this form with Salesforce.com so that I can do that lookup. So we can go ahead and just check that form in. Before we go back out, though, we also want to set up the manager approval view, which will be this display form. So we're just going to jump in and edit this as well, because the default form will just show me the name, the category, the amount, again, the stuff that we see within SharePoint. So by just doing a little bit extra effort here, I can go in and say that I want to grab a view that I've created against Salesforce that shows some account details, and I can just drag it on next to that. And then we'll go down into the SharePoint environment as well, go into our finance site. We can also go ahead and go to that approved document library, approved quote library, and grab a quote history list view that we can show on this form as well. Okay, so once those views load up, we can give them names here. So this will be our quote history. And if we scroll up to the top here, we can say that this is going to be our account details. So now all we need to do is we need to set up a rule. So you can see how we've added the different views here to make a more complex form. What we need to do is set up a rule that says that we load the proper account details and load the proper quote history for the particular account based on the information that's in this first view. So that's very easy to set up. We can go into our kind of natural language rules designer here and go ahead and just add an additional rule. This additional rule, we have an ability to select that we need to basically when a control on that view raises an event. So we're going to go and select that on the display view when the control that holds the account name, so the account data label, when that's changed, we're going to go ahead and say, well, we have an account name. Let's go ahead and actually send some data or transfer some data over to the other views so that they can load up their details. So I'm just going to go ahead and add the transfer data to the rule, and I'm going to go configure that on my display draft quotes controls here. When the account, so that account data label will contain the information that I need, and I can pass it over to this other view, the Salesforce account details view, and down below, I'll just make sure I grab the right one, account data label will go into the list view as well. Click OK, and my rule has been updated. I can go ahead and click Finish, and then just finish on the form as well. So I've made all the changes I need to make on that form. Go back to our main page here, and go ahead and check that in. So now let's go ahead, and this has already been configured in a workflow, very similar workflow that we just did. So let's go back to the library, and let's take this and see what happens. So from the document, I'm going to go into Edit Properties. So now what we're going to see is that the Edit Properties form is no longer a SharePoint form, but is a K2 Smart form. And we'll see that the control here, this account control, is a lookup control. So this is Edge. So all I know is that the first part of the company name is Edge. When I tab off of that, that's going to talk to Salesforce.com. It's going to go ahead and realize, well, it's Edge Communications, and so it goes ahead and loads that up for me. All the rest of the details are okay. I've also made it a little bit easier by adding a button to start the workflow directly from this form, rather than having to jump through the multiple steps of going to the way we did it the first time. So let's just click Start Workflow. That'll start the workflow, close the form, go back to our library, and similar to what we saw before, if we jump in as Bob and go to Bob's work list, refresh that one, will go away. Now we have a quote for Edge. We can open up the view flow for that, fairly similar workflow. If we go into the actual form, now what we're going to see is the form loads up, the information comes through, we have a link to the document, the account details are going to go ahead and load up. And maybe not that time. Let's try that again. Oh, I'm being told I messed up my mapping. Let me just go back to now you know that it's a live demo. Let's go ahead and go back to our library and just see where I made a mistake there on my transfer. So just show you how easy it is to go back in. So we'll go ahead and edit this view. We'll go back into that rule and see where I made this mistake. So when the account data label is changed, we'll go ahead and edit this rule and see where the transfer data is. Okay, so display amount is not going to work. Correct. So let's grab account. That'll work a little bit better. And did I grab account? I did it right the second time. Okay, so very easy. I can go ahead and make that update. Form didn't work, but now I can just go back. I don't even have to restart the workflow, which is really nice. I can just go check this in. And if I go back to Bob and just open up this form again, this time it should go ahead and load up the details. There we go. Very easy to make changes, as you can see. And down below we can see our quote history with some details there. But let's go ahead and action this item just like we did before. Close out. You should have seen the email come through as well. Yeah. There we go. And let's go ahead and move back. All right, so we'll see in draft quotes that that one for Edge is gone. And then if we go into, just like we did before, to approve quotes and go into Edge Communications folder, we'll see that that new one has been added there and this pending signature at the bottom. The other interesting thing that we did around this is in the approved quotes, I went ahead and pre-edited the views for this particular library so that when I go into edit here, I don't want to necessarily let somebody edit the details of the quote. The quote's been approved. We shouldn't be making changes to that. So if I go into edit properties here, what I'm actually going to show is more of a summary view. I'm going to show a read-only view of the information, kind of like we showed to the manager with the quote history and the account details, but also added an additional tab here using our K2 Smart Forms to be able to show some of the workflow history. So we can go ahead and click on the workflow history and get an idea of how long it's taking to move through this workflow, what steps things are going through, and so on. And we've got this one here that's continuing on. So yeah, as you can see, it becomes more about being able to assemble, even within the context of just a document library and just the edit and view and display forms of a document library, we can actually create a fairly powerful application using the power of the K2 platform and K2 Smart Forms and bringing in information from other business systems. So let's go ahead. That's kind of the wrap-up of that second scenario. So let me jump back to the slides here, and let's talk about this third scenario. So now the first two scenarios have focused around we have a document in SharePoint and we're doing something around that document. To Adrian's point earlier, there are scenarios and applications that start to think about being a little bit larger. So if we kind of zoom out and we think about, well, if we built a true quote-to-cash system, a true quote-to-cash system would have information from, might store a document in SharePoint, but would have information from, the Salesforce CRM system. It will have information from an inventory or a pricing list system. At the end of this thing, it would need to go ahead and update a financial system because there's revenue involved. So that might be SAP or Oracle Financials or whatever other system you might use. And so what we have the power to do is to be able to go ahead and build an application that sits outside of SharePoint, where SharePoint is not the originating piece of information, potentially, where the originating information might come from some other system and might make sense to be presented in some other system, but still connects all those systems together as part of one holistic application. So let's go ahead and jump back in and see what that might look like. So stepping out of SharePoint and stepping into Salesforce.com, I've got my Salesforce.com system sitting up here, and I've got this Edge Communications company or account that I've been working with as a salesperson here. So when I go ahead and click on Edge, I can see all the details here, but I might want to be able to say, well, let me go ahead and start off a quote-to-cash process directly from within Salesforce. So when I click on this quote-to-cash link, that's going to go ahead and load up the form, which is then going to go ahead and pull in the details of the account, pull in some additional details maybe about the stock code, the stock price. I can go ahead and select, which contact at this particular company. So this contact list is coming from Salesforce.com as well. And select the contact. The sales rep would come from our local Active Directory environment, so we could select Bob. We can fill out the rest of the details of this form. we might notice that maybe this particular customer has a business within within Canada, so we need to actually use Canadian currency. So this could be a web service call, or is in fact a live web service call to a currency conversion service to go ahead and pull the latest currency, and which is pretty close there. And then we can go ahead and have more of a rich text type control editor here that we can then put in some additional details. Let's go into full screen mode to get a little bit better view. Oops. Okay. Let's go ahead and add a couple of line items here. So the line items then, in this case, are pulling from a SharePoint list. So you can just kind of start seeing how all of this stuff coming together builds out a very rich application within the context of your environment, and not just necessarily within the context of SharePoint itself, but that larger type solution. Some other things that we can do from here: view some additional quotes about this particular customer. So we can see, again, similar to the view I showed earlier, now we can start to see a more complex business process that's moving through a bunch of different stages around potentially finance approvals, creating the PDF and uploading that to SharePoint. We could also even go in a little bit further, and we could see what a print view might look like for this particular document. This could be converted to PDF, stored in SharePoint, and so on. And so the possibilities get pretty endless here once you start thinking in this kind of larger context, where SharePoint is just a piece of the picture as a line of business system, and other line of business systems can start feeding into this larger application. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there and give it back to Adriaan to kind of to wrap up.
Eric, thank you. I just want to make sure you made the right user presentation. Yep, there we go. And can you hear me? Is my audio back on?
You are back up.
All right, good. Well, let's go back to that PowerPoint of mine, and let's start wrapping this up. So, so what you saw there was actually Eric going through a number of scenarios fairly quickly. We had an hour this morning, and we wanted to show to you the depth of the solution. But there's a couple of points here that I do want to highlight. When we started to design, and I mentioned we designed the solution from the ground up, we wanted to make sure that we hit a couple of internal goals that we set for ourselves. One of the first ones was that we wanted to make it really easy for people to be able to install the software and get productive on it very quickly. So the K2 application itself is installed from the SharePoint App Store. You can have that in your internal catalog, or you can have it in the actual, it will be in the actual App Store itself that's available on the web. Download the application, you install it, it's very easy. It will ask you where your K2 server is. It will connect to that K2 server and automatically configures all the OAuth things for you, and really has a near zero config installation experience. We wanted to make it very easy for you to build your workflows. You saw today how easy it was for Eric to go in and build that first approved decline workflow. We're actually doing a lot more work during the beta cycle now to make it even easier for you and make the path between identifying the problem, solving it, and getting to a point where your users can start using the actual solution itself very, very easy and very quick. We don't want you to be able to go, it shouldn't be necessary to go on training to get to a point where you can start building out these workflows. And then enhance them, start building forms, add additional information, access information, use reports. You saw Eric building a smart form that had a tab at the top. That was actually a K2 smart form that's using the SharePoint theme that had a tab at the top that could include our reporting controls that we'll be shipping soon with this solution. So you can build rich reports within the context of your SharePoint list item forms or within your workflow approval steps. And we wanted to make it really easy for people to be able to do that and have access to the information that they will use to build these applications with. And then finally, manage it through their life cycles. We know that the moment that these applications gets deployed, user feedback comes in, needs evolve, organizations change, they're agile, you want to be able to build out more of these, hook some of them together, reuse some of your assets. How easy is it to manage these applications throughout its life cycle? And we set those as goals for ourselves early on. And we work really, really hard to hit those goals to make sure that we're successful when we ship the software. We wanted to make sure that it's all within the context of SharePoint. So you don't have to leave the SharePoint environment. Everything is browser-based tooling. There's a lot there. It's really powerful. It's the whole of K2 Blackpool. It's not a downscaled version of the software. And it all becomes available for you to use, not only in SharePoint 2013, but also within SharePoint 365. What you saw Eric do today will work seamlessly across both of those environments. Not only can you build an application once and access it anywhere, you can actually use the same K2 server to talk to both SharePoint 2013 and SharePoint 365 and have all of your applications within one environment. It's not necessary to isolate your solutions. It's not necessary to have multiple task lists. It's one combined solution. You can start in either one and evolve your application. We feel pretty confident that we're going to hit these goals. We're going to work with our community over the next couple of months as we finish our beta. We thought really long and hard how we should brand the solution. We decided to go for K2 for SharePoint. We're going to make it simple. Will be available to that component. K2 for SharePoint will be available to every single K2 Blackpool customer out there that's current on maintenance at no additional cost. You can just get the software, you download it, you upgrade to the latest version of K2, which you have access to, download the app from the App Store, and you can immediately start building these applications. You must, however, be licensed on K2 Smart Forms if you want to be able to change the Smart Forms, if you want to be able to edit the Smart Forms or edit the forms and enhance them. You have to be licensed for K2 Smart Forms. If you're not licensed for K2 Smart Forms, you can still use the rest of the solution and still build workflow-based solutions and applications using SharePoint forms and route those for approvals and build out fairly rich applications. Finally, we have a beta open. It's available and accessible to all our customers. It's available to all our partners. If you go to beta.k2.com, you can access the sign-up page there. Per request, it's also available for customers who are currently evaluating buying K2, and you can work with your regional teams to get access to that. And we would really like to encourage you to participate in the beta and give us feedback. We're building the software for our customers. We're building it for our partners, and we would really value your feedback in order to make it better and to make it the best possible platform that's out there. We already believe that's the only platform that has forms, workflow, and data that spans the most simplest examples all the way through to the most complex business process applications in one single platform that will allow you as a company to continue to get benefits from this over many, many, many years and many, many, many different applications and solutions. We're going to work really hard to RTM this by the end of Q4. As I mentioned, it's already out in beta. We're already doing a lot of work to get to the next milestone. We're very excited about bringing this to the market this year. And we really appreciate the fact that the community joined us this morning. We were well over 500 people this morning, and we're looking forward to working with everybody to make this successful, to make you successful, and to make this really exciting. I'm going to pause there. We're sort of almost at the top of the hour. I see there's a couple of hands raised for questions. Cody, let's open the Q&A and see if we can address some of those questions, or if we can get back to people with written responses later.
So I've been doing my best to keep up with the questions. They have been coming in hot and heavy throughout the entire presentation, so thank you so much for posting your questions. I will definitely stay on and continue to answer questions through chat, so if you've got any more questions, feel free to post them in. Anybody that has raised their hand, again, just go ahead and post the questions into Q&A Manager. We'll be able to answer them. There's been tons of great comments about the demo really showing off all the new features. There's been lots of questions around kind of some of the architecture and the technical aspects around the offering, so I've been trying to do my best and answer all of those. But really, it looks like there's been a lot of excitement throughout this entire presentation. This presentation will definitely be recorded. It has been recorded. We will post that recording later today, as well as the slides that Adriaan went through. So all of that information will be emailed out to anyone that registered as well as attended today's session, so don't worry about that. I'm going to get back to answering some of these questions.
All right. Well, Cody, I think that's it. I think let's wrap it up here. We'll get back to you with those questions in written form. If there's anything else, then please don't let us know how we can don't hesitate to let us know how we can assist. And once again, we really appreciate everybody's time today. some places it's midnight in the world. We appreciate you joining us, and we're looking forward to talking to everybody soon.